The hum of jazz filled the naval officers' club that Friday evening, soft, dignified, and just loud enough to drown out the clink of metals and glasses. Conversations floated through the air like smoke, stories of deployments, laughter, and pride. The warmth of the room felt invincible until the doors burst open. Two military police officers stepped inside, boots heavy against the marble. The chatter died instantly. In the middle of the room stood a woman in plain civilian clothes, small frame, composed posture. Lieutenant Commander Aaron Ward didn't move, didn't flinch. From across the bar, Captain Blake Turner stumbled forward, his voice sharp with alcohol and ego. "She's impersonating a SEAL," he barked, waving toward her. "Stolen valor, right here in front of everyone," gasps. Phones lifted. Someone laughed. Another shouted, "Record it!" Aaron didn't resist. Her eyes, calm, gray, unbroken, stayed fixed on Turner. Around her neck hung a silver coin, etched with faint numbers, GU070421. Turner snatched it off her chain. "What's this supposed to be, huh?" he sneered. Aaron's voice was low, steady. "You don't know what you're holding." Laughter erupted, cruel and careless, and through it all she stood, still, silent, humiliated, but unshaken. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Military and Veteran Stories, and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Aaron Ward lived a life built on quiet precision. Her small apartment overlooked the harbor just outside Norfolk, Virginia, a view she barely noticed anymore. Every morning began the same way, a pot of black coffee, a slow stretch, then the soft rustle of a pressed uniform laid out hours earlier. She didn't rush, didn't improvise. Everything in her world followed structure, the kind only the military could carve into a person's bones. She had served once, years ago, as a Navy combat medic. Now, after what official papers called injury and reassignment, she spent her days behind a desk in the administrative wing of Naval Operations Command. Paperwork, forms, training reports, the kind of work that kept her invisible, and she preferred it that way. The people around her didn't really know her. They saw a polite woman in her late 30s, short-cropped hair, always early, always correct, but never close. Her office cubicle was spotless, her uniform perfect, her speech was measured, her tone respectful. But there was something else beneath it all, a quiet intensity that unsettled those who mistook calm for weakness. At lunch, she'd sit alone, facing the exit. She'd eat fast, scanning the room with what she pretended was absent thought, but her eyes were always in motion, reading patterns, noting behavior, tracking movement. Old habits die hard, and hers had been carved in the dust and blood of places most officers would never see. Sometimes, when she caught herself listening too closely to footsteps behind her, she'd smile faintly, half at herself, half at the ghosts that refused to leave. Few knew that Aaron still suffered flashes, short, brutal shards of memory she could never control. A smell, a sound, a vibration under her boots. They could pull her back without warning. Once, in the quiet of an empty hallway, the faint chop of a distant helicopter had stopped her mid-step. In her mind, it wasn't Virginia anymore. It was Helmand Province, years ago. The rotor blades thundered overhead, sand filling her mouth, hands slick with blood as she dragged a wounded teammate toward cover. "Ward, move!" someone had shouted through static. "We're losing him." Then, silence. The memory faded. The office fluorescent lights came back into focus. Aaron exhaled, steadying herself before anyone could notice. She never talked about what happened after that. The paperwork had said, blast injury. The truth was heavier, the kind of truth that came with survivor's guilt and a promise she'd made to keep her past sealed. That silence made her an easy target among some of the officers at the base, men and women who needed to measure others to feel taller themselves. Captain Blake Turner was one of them. He carried himself with swagger, medals gleaming like armor for his ego. A man who had seen just enough danger to brag about it, but not enough to humble him. He hated mystery, especially the kind that refused to acknowledge his rank. Aaron's composure irritated him. Her restraint challenged him. and her refusal to answer questions about her past drove him mad. To Turner, people were either impressive or invisible. Erin was neither, and that unsettled him more than he could admit. He'd tried to corner her before, over coffee or after briefings. "So where'd you serve, Ward? Supply Corps?" "Logistics?" She'd smile politely. "Medical. Oh, so you patched up real SEALs, huh?" He'd say with a grin. "Something like that," she'd answer, tone calm, unprovoked. Her composure was a mirror, and Turner didn't like what he saw in it. By the time Friday rolled around, the whispers had already spread through the club that she wasn't who she said she was, that she told stories she couldn't prove, that maybe, just maybe, she'd faked her credentials after her injury. Turner loved rumors like that. They gave him an excuse to show dominance under the guise of patriotism. Lieutenant Ross, his loyal echo, was the first to bite. "Come on, Captain. I bet she's never even held a rifle." "Hell," Lieutenant Cortez added, chuckling, "she probably Googled her way through field medic training." Their laughter filled the officers' lounge that night, bouncing off brass plaques and whiskey glasses. Erin heard some of it, of course. She always heard more than people thought. But she didn't respond. She just folded her hands, nodded to the bartender, and ordered water. The same composure that earned her distrust was the very thing keeping her from exploding. Still, even calm waters hide depth. Beneath the silence, her pulse stayed steady, not from ignorance, but discipline. Years of it. Turner's words cut through the room like dull blades. I'll bet she couldn't even tell a trident from a torpedo. Ross laughed. "If she's a SEAL, then I'm Santa Claus." Erin's lips twitched, not quite a smile, not quite pain. "You shouldn't joke about what you don't understand," she said softly. Turner turned toward her, pretending to laugh. "You gonna educate me, Commander?" She simply met his eyes, unflinching. "No," she said. "Life will." Her calm only fueled his anger. To him, silence was defiance. To her, silence was survival. Later that night, when Turner's laughter grew loud and the whiskey took over, he'd forget that distinction. He'd forget that not every story is meant to be told, and that some silence is the sound of valor waiting to be recognized. In the coming hours, he'd remember her calm face under the club's warm light. He'd remember that coin, and what it really meant. But for now, as the evening crowd laughed and the piano played, Erin Ward sat quietly at her table near the exit, watching the door, listening to every sound, her expression unreadable. It wasn't fear that kept her distant. It was memory. And somewhere deep down, that memory was about to come back for her. The tension that had simmered all night finally cracked. Captain Blake Turner leaned back in his chair, a half-empty glass of whiskey sweating beside him. His voice, sharp and mocking, sliced through the jazz hum of the club. "So, Lieutenant Commander," he called out, loud enough for everyone to hear, "you said you served, didn't you? Go ahead, prove it. Which SEAL team? Which base? Or is that classified too?" The laughter that followed wasn't kind. It was the sound of rank and arrogance mixed together, boots tapping on the floor, medals catching the light as heads turned to watch. Erin Ward sat still at her table, eyes on her untouched glass of water. Her jaw tightened for a fraction of a second before she replied, voice level and even. "Some service," she said quietly, "isn't meant to be talked about." That line only fueled the fire. Turner threw his head back and laughed. "Right. And I'm the Tooth Fairy of Coronado." The room erupted again, laughter, applause, and the clinking of glasses as if cruelty had become entertainment. At the bar's far corner, a man didn't laugh. Master Chief Owen Rikers, retired Navy SEAL, watched the exchange in silence. He'd seen that kind of stillness before, the way someone trained for chaos could remain calm under humiliation. The subtle straightness in her spine, the way she kept her hands visible but relaxed, eyes steady on the nearest exits. He knew combat discipline when he saw it. Riker's gut tightened. Something about the woman didn't add up, and that meant something about Turner's story didn't either. "Come on," Turner goaded, swaggering closer. "If you're really one of us, what's your trident number? Who pinned you? Who's your CO?" Erin didn't move. You don't have the clearance to ask those questions. Her calm voice only made him angrier. Clearance? Lady, I've got more clearance than you've got stories. Laughter again. Only this time, Riker didn't join. He leaned forward on his cane, eyes narrowing. Turner wasn't done. He slammed his glass down and pointed at her coin. And what's that? Souvenir from eBay? I could order 5 just like it by morning. A few officers chuckled. Someone near the back said, Hey, maybe she's undercover for Hollywood. Erin rose slowly from her chair. Her hands were steady, her eyes unreadable. Be careful with your words, Captain. Oh, don't worry, he sneered. They're just words. Words start wars, she said quietly. That stopped a few laughs, but only for a second. Turner smirked, pretending to stumble toward her. You gonna show us how tough you are, Commander? Maybe flash a fake DD-214? When she didn't respond, he waved to the MPs near the entrance, men who'd been stationed by the door for security that night. Gentlemen, I think we've got a stolen valor case right here. You might want to handle that. The 2 MPs hesitated. They glanced at Erin, then at Turner's rank. The room went silent for the first time that evening. The kind of silence that feels wrong, heavy, waiting to collapse. Erin didn't move. You're making a mistake, Turner grinned. Oh, I doubt it. One of the MPs stepped forward. Ma'am, please stand up. She stood. Calmly. No protest, no fight. Just a quiet nod. She placed her hands behind her back before they even asked. You don't have to do this, one of them said under his breath. It's fine, she replied softly. Let them finish their story. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed louder than it should have. Phones rose into the air. The bright glow of recording screens washed over her face, the audience ready for humiliation. Someone whispered near the bar, if she were real, she'd fight back. She turned her head slightly toward the voice. Her tone was calm, certain, the kind that didn't need to be loud. Real operators don't need to. The words landed like a punch, simple, direct, and unforgettable. But the crowd didn't know what to do with it. Some laughed nervously. Others stared. Turner smirked, arms folded across his chest, pretending victory. Riker's jaw flexed. Every instinct in him screamed that something wasn't right. He'd seen imposters before, cocky, loud, eager to impress. This woman was the opposite. Thor, quiet, grounded. The kind of quiet you only earn by losing too many people to talk about. He stood up. His knees ached as they always did, but he didn't care. As the MPs guided Erin through the crowd, Riker followed a few steps behind, ignoring the looks. He noticed the chain around her neck, snapped and hanging loose. The coin she'd worn was gone, clutched in Turner's fist. Riker recognized the faint numbers that had glinted on it earlier. GU07, 0421. He couldn't place them exactly, but something deep in his memory stirred. Ghost unit? Couldn't be. That was supposed to be decommissioned before Afghanistan ended. Still, the pattern matched. He pushed through the crowd, eyes narrowing on Turner. Where'd you get that coin? He demanded. Turner scoffed. Evidence! She dropped it. Give it back. I think I'll hold on to it. Might make a great example at next week's briefing. Riker stepped closer. His voice dropped to a growl. You don't even know what you're holding, son. Turner laughed. Oh, please, don't tell me you believe her, Chief. Riker's stare didn't waver. I've known real operators. They don't need to prove anything. Turner waved him off. Yeah? And they don't sit in bars pretending to be heroes either. The old SEAL didn't reply. He just picked up his cane and followed the MPs out the door, keeping distance but not losing sight. Something deep inside him said this wasn't a fraud case. It was a mistake, one that was about to blow up in everyone's face. Outside, the night air bit cold against the shore breeze. Erin was guided toward a waiting SUV, calm as ever. The MPs looked uncomfortable, but orders were orders. Riker watched her duck into the vehicle. She didn't look back. He noticed something else, too. The way she subtly checked the corners, mirrors, and windows before stepping in. Those weren't the instincts of a civilian pretending to be tough. Those were the eyes of someone who'd survived too much to ever stop watching. As the car pulled away, Turner came out behind him, grinning. "You'll see, Chief," he said. "I just saved the Navy from a fraud." Riker didn't answer. He just kept his eyes on the fading taillights and muttered to himself, "No, son, I think you just embarrassed the Navy in front of one." The laughter from the club started up again inside, softer this time, uneasy. Turner went back in, chest puffed, ready to tell his version of the story. But Riker stayed where he was, staring at the ocean beyond the base lights. He'd been around long enough to know when a storm was coming, and tonight, one had just been set in motion. The question lingered like smoke in the air. If you saw this happening, what would you have done? The room was all hard edges and cold air. Fluorescent lights hummed with a faint, relentless buzz. A metallic chair creaked when she sat, the kind of sound that made every eye flick toward the door. Commander Lewis Grant set a thin folder on the table and took his seat. Across from him, Lieutenant Commander Erin M. Ward folded her hands. Captain Blake Turner leaned on the wall, smug and loose, like a man who thought the ending was already written. "State your name and branch for the record," Grant said. "Lieutenant Commander Erin M. Ward," she answered. "United States Navy Medical Corps?" Grant nodded, expression neutral. His fingers tapped the keyboard. The scream washed his face blue. "No record of active SEAL affiliation," he said finally. Turner's grin tilted. "See? Told you." Erin didn't speak. A faint bruise ringed the place where the chain had snapped around her neck. She kept her shoulders squared, her breathing steady, her gaze level, never combative, never pleading. Grant watched her for a long beat. "Ma'am, just so we're clear, claiming SEAL status without proof is a felony-level problem. If someone told you to say that coin means something it doesn't, this is the time to walk it back." "I've claimed nothing," Erin said even. "You have," Turner scoffed. "Oh, come on." Grant lifted a palm, stopping him. He glanced down at her hands, knuckles with a roadmap of scar tissue, healed burns that didn't come from office work, small details that spoke without permission. "Where are you currently assigned, Lieutenant Commander?" "Admin, Training and Readiness," she said. "Norfolk. Duties, Curriculum Review. Medical Readiness Oversight. Reserve Liaison." Her cadence was precise. Not stiff, precise. The difference mattered, though Turner didn't hear it. Grant's eyes narrowed. "Your Medical Corps." "Why are you wearing that coin?" Erin's gaze didn't shift. "Because someone handed it to me when words weren't enough." Turner laughed under his breath. "Poetry night. Fantastic." Grant ignored him. "What's your commissioning source?" "Direct commission," she said. "Prior service." "What prior service?" She exhaled once, controlled. "Hospital corpsman." Grant's posture changed a degree. "Fleet Marine Force? Attached at different times. No elaboration. No fishing. Just enough to be true." He typed again, slower now. "Did you ever attend, support, or medically supervise elements of BUS?" Erin's eyes held steady. "I supported training evolutions when required." Turner rolled his eyes. "Google also supports training evolutions." Grant's look told him to be quiet. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Fine," he said. "Let's talk Coronado." She said nothing, waiting, a person who could withstand long pauses without filling them. "What is the grinder?" "Concrete courtyard for PT," she answered. "West of the pool. Evolutions include push-ups, flutter kicks, dips, 8-count bodybuilders. Instructors use whistles to control cadence. Any failure affects the whole boat crew." "Where's the bell?" "By the quarterdeck," she said. 3 rings. You place your helmet under it." Turner shifted. The smugness in his mouth faltered for a second. Grant kept going. "Surf torture?" She didn't blink. "Now called surf immersion. Trainees lock arms at the swash zone on the ocean side. Instructors manage hypothermia risk. Timing varies with water temperature and tide. The point isn't drowning, it's cohesion." Grant's fingers went still. "Log PT? 6-man teams, Telephone poles, she said. Overhead presses, sit-ups, rotations. Forehead split open if you're not moving together. Salt in the cuts makes it worse on purpose. He studied her face. She kept hers neutral. Timed run? 4 miles on the Strand, she said. Soft sand. Cutoffs matter more than personal bests, because standards are a trust proxy. Turner looked at Grant, forcing a laugh. Okay, sure, she read a book. Grant didn't even glance at him. Instructors? I won't name instructors, she replied, because you don't know them. Because you don't need them, she said, voice flat. And because dropping names to look legitimate is the first thing fakes do. Silence spread out like cold water. Grant changed angles. Med support during Hell Week? Staging zones behind berms, she said. Hot broth. IVs when necessary. Oral rehydration otherwise. Core temp monitoring. We watch hands for immersion injuries. And we watch eyes. The 1,000-yard kind that stops tracking. That's when they're done, even if they're standing up. Turner's grip on his crossed arms tightened. How does she know that? No one answered. Grant's questions came lighter, like he was testing the edges of a door he'd thought was locked. What mistakes get people hurt on the obstacle course, he asked. Impatience and pride, she said. The Weaver and the Slide for Life punish both. People try to beat the clock by skipping safety. That's how you break ankles. Or worse. What's the only correct answer when an instructor asks you a question? Her eyes softened a fraction. Who ya, instructor? Grant let out a slow breath, as if he'd been holding it for several minutes without realizing. Turner tried to recover ground. So she's memorized trivia. Big deal. Erin turned her head slightly. Trivia doesn't give you scars like this, she said quietly, glancing at her knuckles. Trivia doesn't keep you awake when another student's core temp drops and he keeps saying he's fine. Trivia doesn't smell like wet neoprene and diesel. Turner forced a smirk. Nice script. Grant closed the folder. He looked at her posture. Not defensive, not collapsed, just prepared. People who'd never sat an interrogation imagined yelling and slammed fists. Grant knew better. The truth often surfaced in the way a person could endure stillness. The door clicked open. A shadow fell across the gray tile. Master Chief Owen Riker stepped inside with a quiet nod toward Grant. Permission to observe? He asked. Grant hesitated, then gestured to a chair against the wall. You can sit. Riker didn't. He remained standing, hands resting on the worn head of his cane. His eyes moved once across the room, then settled on Erin's forearm where the sleeve had ridden up when the cuffs came off for questioning. A lattice of faint ink lay just under the skin, not enough to read, just enough to exist. A disciplined tattoo, small, deliberate, tucked where sleeves could hide it. Numbers. And the ghost of a trident outline that wasn't the brash kind people flash on beach days. Riker's throat worked once. He said nothing. Grant followed his line of sight, then returned to Erin's face. Lieutenant Commander Ward, did you serve in any capacity with Naval Special Warfare units? I supported elements when tasked, she said. Did you deploy with them? Sometimes my job took me where they were, she replied. That's all, Turner snorted. She's allergic to straight answers. Grant ignored him. What's a 9-line? He asked. Erin didn't pause. 9-line medevac. Location of pickup. Radio frequency, number of patients by precedence. Special equipment, number of patients by type. Security at pickup site, method of marking. Patient nationality and status, NBC contamination if applicable. The answer fired out like a well-oiled rifle. Riker's jaw clenched once, hard. Grant lifted the coin with 2 fingers, the one Turner had tossed on the table earlier like a trinket he'd win at a fair. The silver caught the light. GU070421. What do these numbers mean to you? He asked. Erin's eyes flicked down and back up. They mean someone did their job when I couldn't. Code for what? A history that doesn't help you tonight, she said. Turner pushed off the wall. Or a fake code she invented 5 minutes ago. Riker's voice came out low. That pattern's not invented. Turner rounded on him. Oh, now the old man's a believer? Riker didn't take the bait. He addressed Grant, not Turner. Sir, with respect, she's sitting like someone who's already decided what line she won't cross. That's not how posers sit. That's how people sit when they've signed paper they can't unsign. Grant studied Aaron again. He'd seen liars, the twitching, the performance, the overreach. This was different. She never overreached. She never volunteered a flourish. She spoke when required, and then stopped. It was as if she kept measuring how much room the truth could take without breaking a promise. Why won't you just tell us where you served? He asked. Because some things are owed to the dead, she said. The words chilled the room more than the air conditioning could. Grant's voice softened. Who pinned you? She gave the smallest shake of her head. I'm not here to be believed, Commander. I'm here to be processed, Turner scoffed. Cute. Riker took one step forward, the rubber tip of his cane whispering across the tile. He pointed with his chin, not his hand, to the faint ink on her forearm. Sir, he said to Grant, you know what that looks like if you've been around long enough. Grant's eyes narrowed. What does it look like to you? Riker didn't answer directly. Instead, he spoke to Aaron, his tone the first gentle sound in the room. You carry that because words weren't enough, he said. For the first time, Aaron's posture shifted by a hair's breadth. The kind of shift you only saw if you were trained to watch the breathing of a casualty while the chaos howled around you. Grant closed the folder. All right, he said. One more series. If you're faking, this will show it. He kept his voice clinical, almost bored, as if routine might pull the truth closer. What's the purpose of surf immersion beyond cold stress? Cohesion under discomfort, she said. No one breaks alone. Either you hold together or you fail together. What's the quiet danger in Hell Week that isn't cold or sleep deprivation? Joints, she said. Overuse. Micro tears. People mistake grit for invincibility. Then the tibia says otherwise. What's the first thing a corpsman watches for when a trainee tries to tough it out? Stubborn eyes, she said, the ones that stop tracking a moving hand. Grant sat back. Turner had no line ready. Even he felt the way the room had tilted. Riker finally took the chair, the effort making his breath deepen. He still didn't look at Turner. He looked at the coin, then at the ink under the sleeve. Then at the woman who never asked for a single ounce of sympathy. Grant rubbed his temples. He wasn't convinced, but he wasn't convinced of the other thing either, and that mattered. Captain Turner, he said, not looking at him, leave the coin on the table. Turner hesitated. It's evidence. It's not yours, Grant replied. The coin clinked on the metal. Grant stood. We're taking a short pause. He nodded to the MPs at the door. Riker rose slower than he wanted to, then paused, eyes lingering on the faint tattoo again. That disciplined mark, more absence than ink, the way some people carry history, barely visible, impossible to erase. Turner leaned toward the table as they moved to step out. How does she know that stuff? He hissed. Riker answered without looking at him. Because some people learned it in the dark, he said. And they didn't come back to talk about it. The door shut. The hum of the lights stayed. Aaron's breathing stayed even. She didn't rub the bruise on her neck. She didn't ask for water. She kept her eyes on the spot where the coin sat, not because she needed it, but because it had once been handed to her in silence, and silence was the only language that ever fit. Grant came back into the room carrying a long, black case. No one spoke. The MPs straightened by the door. Turner's smirk tried to reappear and couldn't quite find the courage. Riker stayed standing, his hand resting on the worn head of his cane, eyes faintly narrowed as if bracing for bad weather. Grant set the case on the table with a soft thud. He flipped the latches, lifted the lid, and peeled back foam. Inside lay a disassembled Mk-113 Mod 7 Esquate sniper rifle. Action, barrel, bolt, trigger pack, stock, optic, still capped. The parts lay in quiet, surgical order, the way an armorer would ship them for inventory. Let's see if our SEALs can handle this, he said, his voice intentionally dry. Turner gave a little scoff of triumph, like a man who'd placed a winning bet. Perfect, he said. End of story. Aaron didn't move right away. She looked once at the case, then at Grant, then at the coin he had left on the table, GU070421, catching the fluorescence with an indifferent glint. "Sir," she said, "do you want speed or safety?" Grant folded his arms. "You tell me," he replied. "Both," she said. She slid the chair back an inch with her knee. "Do you want this blind?" Grant raised a brow. "If you prefer." She nodded once. "Use my jacket," she said to the nearest MP. "Or anything clean." The MP hesitated, then slipped off his uniform cover and handed her a folded black knit cap. She tied it across her eyes with practiced calm, a neat double knot behind her head, one end tucked so it wouldn't dangle. When she was done, she lifted her chin slightly, as if positioning her ears to do the work her sight wouldn't. Her hands hovered over the case. She didn't grab. She listened, to her own breath, to the faintest metallic whisper when her finger brushed a spring, to the vibration of the table as she shifted her weight. Then she moved. The bolt and the body found each other first, not with force, but with the easy click of familiarity. She palmed the action, tested it inside the stock well, and seated it with that small, confident pressure that comes from muscle memory. No wrench, no torque reading on display, just an instinct for enough that keeps men alive and weapons honest. She found the barrel by feel, cool steel. The index point under her thumb. She set it, adjusted, tested for the whisper of even contact, and seated it flush. No showmanship, no flair. Only the quiet rhythm of someone making something whole again. The trigger unit came next. She raised it, paused, lowered, then raised again. Her head tilted, listening for the slight scratch of alignment. The parts settled like puzzle pieces that remembered the picture. Riker took a step closer without meaning to. "That's not something you learn online," he muttered. Turner shifted, a small crack in the armor of his certainty. "She rehearsed this," he said too fast. She must have." Aaron's fingers found the bolt handle. She ran the action once with no bolt, feeling for clean travel, then mated the bolt to its home. Her hand paused at the safety. A soft click. Her other hand tapped the magazine well, not inserting anything, just acknowledging the empty space the way you touch a friend's shoulder in the dark to say, "I'm here." Grant didn't move a muscle. He watched her hands the way a surgeon watches a heartbeat monitor. She uncapped the optic by feel. The cover slid off with two small sighs of rubber. She brushed the glass once with the back of her knuckle, not cleaning, just confirming there was nothing on it. Then she settled the scope onto the rail, counted silent notches with her fingertip, and tightened the mount with firm, short turns. Not too much, not too little. The kind of just right you don't trust to anyone who hasn't lived with recoil. "Time," Turner blurted, as if speed could save him from what he was seeing. No one answered him. Aaron brought the rifle up, seated the stock into the pocket of her shoulder, and leaned into it with the posture of someone who knows that a weapon is a conversation, not an argument. Her cheek found its imaginary weld. Her right hand ghosted the trigger, not pressing, just feeling the curve, like shaking hands with an old instructor and recognizing the grip. Satisfied, she set the rifle back down. Her fingers moved to the chamber and tapped once, twice, a ritual more than a check. Then she untied the blindfold and set it neatly next to the case. "Safety on," she said softly. Chamber clear. For a full heartbeat, the room forgot how to breathe. Even the lights seemed to hum lower. Grant's expression didn't change, but something in his shoulders did. Not surrender, not belief. A recalibration, the mental sound of a map being redrawn. One of the MPs let out air he didn't realize he'd been holding. The other looked at Turner, then away, as if embarrassed by the rank he was standing near. Turner forced a laugh and failed. "Lucky guess," he said, pushing off the wall. "Anyone could learn that." Aaron finally looked at him. Her gaze wasn't angry. It was, if anything, almost kind. "Then try it," she said. For a second he didn't move. Then pride bit him, and he stepped forward. Grant didn't stop him. He only said, "Be careful," with a neutrality that sounded like a warning disguised as permission. Turner lowered himself into the chair like a man taking a dare he knows he shouldn't. His hands hovered over the rifle, then darted to the bolt as if that were the one part guaranteed to obey him. He lifted it, fumbled the angle, tried to seat it, and met resistance he hadn't expected. He turned it the wrong way, then too far, the right way. Metal chirped unhappily. He glanced up, flushing at the silence. Every sound he made felt amplified by the room's judgment. "Relax your shoulders," Aaron said quietly. "You're fighting it." "I'm not," he started, then bit it off. He tried again. The bolt refused to ride smooth. He couldn't find the small ease point where it wants to go home. A pinched expression formed around his eyes, as if the rifle itself were being insolent. He reached for the optic mount and gave it a turn it didn't deserve. Riker's cane tapped the floor once, a soft reprimand. Turner ignored it and shifted to the stock, then back to the bolt, then to the safety like a man playing three-card Monte with himself. Minutes stretched. Grant never glanced at the clock. He didn't have to. Finally, Turner tried the action again and made a mistake a tired trainee makes on a long day. He attempted to lock it with the wrong rhythm, jamming rather than joining. The rifle stayed stubbornly indifferent. He set it down harder than he should have, forced a shrug, and tried to smirk. "Fine," he said. "It's a precision weapon. They're finicky." Riker spoke, voice low enough to be almost gentle. "They're honest," he said. "You're the finicky one." Turner shot him a look, then directed his frustration to Aaron like heat finding the nearest surface. "Happy now?" he snapped. Parlor trick accomplished. Aaron didn't touch the rifle again. She reached instead for the coin on the table, the small, unassuming piece of metal that had started the avalanche. It spun once between her fingers, catching the light along its edge. Across its face, the engraving waited in plain sight for anyone who didn't know how to read it. GU07-0421. Riker leaned closer, not out of curiosity, but recognition tugging at memory. He wasn't looking to be convinced. He was trying to place the thing he already knew. "GU," he murmured, 7-04-21. He looked up at Grant. "That number? That's not random." Grant had been circling the same conclusion from a different wing of the building. He drew the coin toward him with 2 fingers and studied the way the numbers lived together, not like a serial, but like a story that only people from a certain room would understand. "Lieutenant Commander," he said quietly, "who gave you this?" Aaron's thumb pressed the coin flat. "When words weren't enough," she said again. Turner rolled his eyes, but it was thin. "Oh, come on." Grant raised a hand, and Turner stopped talking mid-gesture. The command in that small movement reminded everyone who actually ran the room. "Chief," Grant said to Riker, still looking at the coin, "does this format match anything you've ever seen?" Riker didn't answer right away. He stared at Aaron's forearm, where the sleeve had shifted just enough to show those faint lines of ink. Not a billboard tattoo. A tucked-away proof of life. "It matches something I wasn't supposed to see more than once," he said at last. "Back when a friend showed me a thing he swore he didn't have." Grant nodded as if some internal meter had finally tipped. "Okay," he said. "We're done flirting with guesses." He closed the case on the rifle and latched it with care, as if the act of respect might steady his own thoughts. Then he stepped to the door and spoke to the MP in a low voice that carried just enough to be official. "Get me SNCIS chest," he said. "Now." "Special agent on duty? Secure channel." Turner's head jerked. "On what grounds? We've got enough to book her and—" Grant turned, calm as a winter coastline. "On the grounds that I don't like charging people for the wrong thing," he said. Turner opened his mouth, then shut it. It wasn't that he understood. It was that something in Grant's tone suggested that blundering forward would be remembered in writing. Aaron set the coin back down with reverence out of proportion to its size. She didn't look triumphant. She looked tired. The tiredness of a person who's watched rumors grow legs too many times to be surprised when they run. Grant's call connected through the wall phone, routed and rerouted with a series of transfers that told everyone in the room they were stepping into a landscape with fences they couldn't see. He kept his answers crisp and exact, identifying himself, the facility, the incident report number, the need for EG at on-site verification, from an agent with clearance beyond the base's routine. He spelled out the code on the coin. He didn't say the words in his mind, the two words Riker hadn't spoken either. But they were all circling the same rumor that wasn't a rumor. He hung up and returned to the table. "Agent is inbound," he said. 15 minutes. Erin gave a small nod. "Thank you," she said. Turner laughed a brittle laugh. "Thank you. For what exactly?" "This isn't a movie, Commander. Your little magic trick won't." Grant's eyes cut to him. "Captain," he said, "you will observe and remain silent unless addressed." The authority in that sentence did what handcuffs sometimes can't. Turner leaned back against the wall and stared at a spot above the clock as if time might get bored and help him. Riker moved to the far corner and settled into a chair like a man giving his knees a truce. He set the cane across his lap and breathed slowly, hands quiet. Every few seconds, his gaze touched the coin again, then Erin's forearm, then her face. Silence grew into the room like dusk. No sound but the fluorescent hum and the gentle tick of a vent duct expanding and contracting as the system cycled. Grant broke it with a question he asked as if to the air. What would make a person keep a promise this long? Erin didn't look at him. "Graves," she said. Another minute passed. Then another. The door opened without a knock. An NCIS badge entered first, followed by a woman in a navy suit, hair pulled back, eyes like someone who makes a living recognizing the one detail everyone else missed. "Special Agent Harper Dunch," she said, flashing credentials for a fraction of a second. Long enough for Grant, too fast for Turner. Grant gestured to the chair across from Erin. "Agent." "Thank you for coming." Dunn didn't sit. She scanned the table, clocked the rifle case, clocked the coin, clocked the bruise ringing Erin's neck where the chain had snapped. "Tell me why I'm here," she said. Grant summarized in the clipped language of a person scrubbing adjectives out of a report. Allegation. Detainment. Identification. Test responses. Demonstration. Then he tapped the coin with his forefinger. "And this?" Dunn's eyes dropped to HGU 070421. She didn't pick it up. She leaned down and read it the way a bomb tech reads a wire. Something in her jaw tightened. "What terminal did you use to run her name?" she asked. "Base network," Grant said. Dunn's attention snapped to him. "Then you didn't run her name," she said evenly. "You ran the version you're allowed to see." Turner pushed off the wall. "Agent, with respect." She cut him a look that made the rest of his sentence lose its legs. "With respect," she said, "don't speak again." She took a small device from her pocket, not a phone, not quite, and set it on the table. "Everyone without a need to know will leave," she said. "That includes anyone who's touched evidence for the sake of a souvenir." No one moved. Grant cleared his throat. "You heard the agent," he said. "Out. MPs stay. Chief Riker stays. Captain Turner," he paused, "you will wait outside until I call you." Turner looked like a man left out of a secret in his own house. He started to object, saw Dunn's face, and thought better of it. He left. The door shut behind him with a soft, defeated click. Dunn sat at last. She set her device between herself and Erin, then met Erin's eyes for the first time. There was no question in her look. "Only measure." "Lieutenant Commander Ward," she said quietly. "Do I have your consent to verify what this coin says you are?" Erin nodded. "Yes, ma'am," she said. Dunn touched the device and began to type. Her keystrokes were unhurried, exact, like someone entering a place that permits no mistakes. Grant didn't ask what she was doing. He didn't need to. Whatever system she was using didn't belong to his building. While the agent worked, Riker leaned forward, elbows on knees. He spoke barely above a whisper, aimed at no one in particular. "Only operators carry that," he said. "And only certain ones keep it where it can be seen." The room heard him anyway. Some truths don't need volume. On the table, the coin lay under the lights like a thing with its own gravity. The engraving didn't glow. It didn't move. It simply refused to be ordinary. Grant folded his hands and waited. For the first time since the night began, waiting felt like the right thing to do. Special Agent Harper Dunn didn't take off her coat. She closed the door behind her, crossed to the table, and let her gaze settle on the small silver coin like it was a live device. The room read her posture and went still in self-defense. "Who authorized you to confiscate this?" she asked, voice level. Captain Blake Turner straightened, then faltered. It was evidence." "No," she said, not looking at him. "It's classified property." The words didn't rise in volume. They didn't need to. Turner stepped back a half pace, as if something hot had crept across the table, and he didn't want to admit he felt it. Commander Lewis Grant slid the coin toward her with 2 careful fingers. "Agent Dunn," he said, measured, "I contacted you for verification. We were unable to confirm anything on our network." "You wouldn't," Dunn replied. "Not on yours." She placed a compact terminal on the table and turned it on. A thin, muted glow washed the metal surface. She produced a smart card from a sleeve near her badge and fed it into a slot, then pressed her thumb to the device. A quiet chime. She typed a string of characters that looked too long to memorize and too precise to guess. The device thought. Everyone watched nothing happen. Dunn didn't look up. "Room is compartmented as of now," she said. "If you don't need to be here, you don't get to be here." Grant gestured at the MPs to hold fast, then nodded to Master Chief Owen Riker. "Chief stays," he said. He turned to Turner. "Captain, wait outside." Turner's jaw worked. "With respect, Commander." "Outside," Grant repeated. Turner lingered a heartbeat too long, then stepped out. The door shut with a soft click that sounded like the room exhaling. Dunn angled the coin so the engraving faced her lens. "GU 70421 stared back. She keyed the sequence again, then another layered access on top of layered access, each one acknowledged by the device with a small shift in color. The screen darkened to crimson. One line appeared, in letters meant to stop hands, ACCESS restricted, Ghost Unit 7 GU 07. Level Omega clearance. Required. No one moved. Even the air felt heavier, as if the ventilation system had decided it too didn't belong in this conversation. Riker breathed out through his nose, a sound closer to a prayer than a sigh. "Only operators carry that," he whispered. Dunn didn't smile. She looked at Aaron Ward. In that look lived recognition without surprise, duty without drama. She set her hands flat on the table, then breaking every instinct to keep things quiet, she rose and offered the smallest salute a person can give while still making it count. "Ma'am," she said softly. Aaron's eyes flicked once, gratitude passing like a shadow over water. She didn't change posture. She didn't need to. Dunn reached for her lapel mic and spoke with the cadence of a message meant to be repeated exactly. "Control, this is Dunn, NCIS. Authenticate Tango 07. Stand by for priority traffic." She paused. Then, "Inform command. Operator Ward has resurfaced." Silence reclaimed the room. Grant's face had learned something and was deciding what to do with it. He stepped closer, lower voice now, as if changing pitch could keep the truth from bleeding under the door. "Agent, what is Ghost Unit 7? Dunn kept her eyes on the terminal. "You don't want that answer, Commander. I need an answer. You'll get authority," she said. "Then you'll get a need to know." In that order. He accepted that the way a career officer accepts weather, by not pretending he controls it. Outside, footfalls multiplied in the hallway, quick and organized. The kind that aren't curious, the kind that already have a place to stand. Aaron's gaze never left the coin. The bruise around her neck had deepened along its edges, a small halo of harm against steady skin. She didn't rub it. She didn't adjust her collar. She just watched the proof of a story she'd declined to tell. Riker leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I knew a man from a place that didn't have a name," he said. "Not quite to anyone, not quite to himself. He showed me something like that once, said if I ever saw it again, I should get out of the way." Grant looked at him. Are we in the way, Chief? Riker's mouth tugged, almost a smile, almost grief. I think we're about to be. The door opened without a knock. Uniforms preceded the man by a breath, clearing space from habit more than decision. Major General Thomas Keegan stepped in. He didn't speak at first. He took in the scene, the MPs, the terminal, the coin, Grant's posture, Riker's eyes. And then he saw Aaron. Everything else in him stopped moving. For a full 3 seconds, the general and the woman in the chair simply looked at each other. In that span lived 10 years of orders, outcomes, and unfiled after-action reports. Keegan's voice returned as command, not volume. Stand down, he said. That woman doesn't answer to you. She trained half your teams. The sentence landed like a door ceiling. The MPs straightened to attention without being told. Grant shifted his weight a fraction to the left, instinctively clearing the lane between Keegan and Aaron as if a salute needed runway. Turner, hovering just beyond the threshold, tried to see past the uniforms and failed. He took one step in, then met Keegan's eyes and retreated like a man who had brushed an electric fence. Dunn closed her terminal and removed the smart card, resetting the screen to featureless black. She didn't introduce the general. That would have been theater. She simply stepped aside. Keegan approached the table slowly, like a man walking through a memory with real furniture in it. Up close, the lines around his eyes bore the map of a career that had cost him sleep. He put one palm to the table's edge, then looked at the coin. When his gaze lifted, it held more apology than authority. Operator Ward, he said quietly. Aaron inclined her head. Sir. His throat worked. We were told you were unavailable. Unavailable was the point, she replied. He straightened, not with pride, but with respect taking physical shape. Ma'am, he said, and he saluted. No one breathed. The salute wasn't dramatic. It was perfect. Exact angle, exact duration. The kind of salute a general gives a person who isn't decorated on paper. Aaron didn't rise, but her eyes softened a fraction, and she returned it with the smallest lift of her chin, the shared language of people who have earned silence. Grant found his voice and kept it professional. General, there were allegations. I've seen the allegations, Keegan said, not unkindly. What I'm seeing now is a failure of curiosity. Grant accepted the hit. Sir! Keegan turned his head slightly. Agent Dunn? Authentication complete, she said. We're operating above this facility's clearance. I recommend immediate expungement of recordings, retention of handwritten notes only, and controlled chain for the coin. Approved, Keegan said. He focused on the MPs. You never saw a coin. You escorted a Navy officer for routine verification. That's what you'll write, if you write at all. Yes, sir, both answered, relief and gravity braided in their voices. Riker stood with care, honoring his knees by not pretending they were 30. General, he said, permission to say something out of turn. Keegan's mouth flicked. You've earned that permission in more rooms than this one, Chief. Riker nodded at the coin. Respectfully, sir, if this ever happens again, you might consider telling the junior ones on base that there are things they don't get to test. Keegan's eyes warmed. I'll consider it an order I should have given before tonight. He looked to Aaron again, and the command fell away to reveal the man. We kept your name off walls because you asked us to, he said. That doesn't mean we forgot you. I didn't do it to be remembered, she said. I know, he replied. That's why we remember. Turner cleared his throat from the doorway, a sound that asked permission and regret at once. General Keegan, sir, if I could just... You can apologize later, Keegan said without looking. Right now, you can listen. Turner's face went still. He listened. Keegan addressed Grant with the calm of a man repairing a bridge while standing on it. Commander, you did 2 things right tonight. You called NCIS, and you didn't double down when the room tilted. That will matter in your record. What will also matter is that this officer was cuffed in a bar because a coin did not look like a coin to people who wanted a spectacle. Grant's jaw tightened, not in defiance, but in ownership. Understood, sir. Dunn slipped a sealed bag from her case. With your permission, General, she said, I'll retain the coin for secured transport and return it to the operator at release. Keegan deferred with a small nod toward Aaron. Her call. Aaron looked at the coin as if it were a photograph only she could see. Hold it until we're done, she said, then I'll take it back. Dunn sealed the bag, labeled it without flourish, and set it near her terminal. Keegan rested both hands on the table and leaned in, not looming, just anchoring the room. There are operations you'll never read about, he said to Grant, to the MPs, to the empty space where Turner had tried to be tall. They exist precisely because no one gets to wave a flag over them. When one of those operators walks into your building, your first job is humility. Your second is stewardship. Tonight, we missed both. He let that sit. No one argued. There are some verdicts you accept because they balance more than the moment. Aaron finally shifted in her chair, not to claim space, but to give it back. Sir, she said to Keegan, this doesn't need a parade. He almost smiled. It needs a correction. He glanced toward the door. Bring him in. Turner stepped back inside, posture uncertain. He looked at Aaron, then at the general, then at the floor, the geography of a man trying to orient after following a bad compass. Keegan spoke without edge. Captain Turner, you will write a memorandum of events as you believe them, and a separate memorandum of correction as you now understand them. You will then step away from any proceeding touching this incident. NCIS will handle the chain. Do you understand? Turner's voice was small. Yes, sir. You'll also return property that isn't yours, Keegan added. Turner's hand trembled as he glanced at the sealed bag, then at Dunn. I don't have it, sir. Agent Dunn. She has it because you shouldn't, Keegan said. That's the point, Turner nodded. Understood. Riker looked at Aaron, the lines in his face deeper with relief. Ma'am, he said, if I crossed a line by following you in here, I apologize. But I've seen too many wrong people cuffed to watch it happen again without using what little I have left. Aaron met his eyes. You didn't cross a line, Chief, she said. You stood on it. Keegan straightened. The room allowed itself one collective breath. Here's what happens next, he said. We close this loop, we clean this paper, and we put this night where it belongs, off the record, but not out of mind. He looked to Aaron. And then, if she allows it, I will walk her out myself. She gave the smallest nod. I'd appreciate the air, sir. Dunn gathered her device, calm restored to its case. I'll escort the chain, she said. Then I'll brief my director that the matter is resolved. Use the word contained, Keegan replied. Resolved implies it happened. Contained suggests it never will again. Dunn inclined her head. Contained, sir. The general turned toward the door, then paused and looked back at Aaron one last time. Whatever he said next came from a place without rank. You did more than what was asked, he said. We recognized it then. We recognize it now. Aaron's answer was almost a whisper. I did my duty, sir. Keegan nodded once. So did you, he said to everyone else, until you didn't. Fix that part. No one argued. No one excused. The lesson had already written itself. Outside, the corridor had quieted, the way bases do after a rumble order reasserting itself, routine returning like tide. Inside, the coin waited in its seal, history compact enough to fit in a palm, weight enough to hold a room. Major General Thomas Keegan stood a moment longer at the head of the table, the sealed bag containing the coin still glinting under the fluorescent light. When he finally moved toward Aaron Ward, the sound of his boots was the only thing left alive in the room. He stopped beside her chair, close enough that the others could see the change in his expression. Command falling away, recognition taking its place. The look carried more than rank, it carried years. You weren't supposed to be here, he said quietly. Aaron looked up, the faintest trace of a smile touching her face. Wasn't planning to be. The general drew in a breath that shook once on the way out. Then, before anyone could process it, he came to attention, shoulders squared, chin high. The air thickened. His right hand rose to the brim of his cap in a single, deliberate motion. Every sound in the room stopped. Operator Ward, he said, his voice breaking just enough for the truth to sound human. It's an honor." The words hit harder than any order. The MPs by the door lowered their eyes, ashamed of the cuffs that had touched her wrists. Commander Grant's hands went still on the edge of the table, his posture turning into something close to reverence. Turner's face drained of color. He looked like a man who had just realized he'd mistaken lightning for a flashlight. Keegan let his hand fall slowly back to his side and turned toward them all. "You just arrested one of the most decorated operators this country has ever known," he said, calm but cold. "A combat medic and breacher for Ghost Unit 7-1 of ours. She deployed on 17 black missions across 4 theaters. When you read about Operation Neptune Spear, remember that the men who came home did so because someone like her was already there." He looked back at Aaron. "She's been officially listed as deceased for 10 years. That's how we kept her alive." Grant swallowed. "My God!" "Don't use his name," Keegan said softly. "Use hers." The general stepped aside. Riker, still holding his cane, straightened as much as his knees would allow. His eyes shone, wet but proud. He gave a slow, deliberate salute, the kind that comes from the body's memory rather than protocol. "Welcome home, ma'am," he said. Aaron returned it with a nod that trembled just once. The motion unlocked something in the room. One by one, the others followed. Commander Grant first, then Agent Dunn, then the 2 MPs. Even Turner, pale and hollow, lifted his hand at last. No music, no applause. Just the hush of boots shifting on tile and the whisper of fabric as arms moved in unison. The salutes held longer than regulation demanded, as if every second might undo a fraction of the harm done earlier. When they finally lowered their hands, no one spoke. The silence itself had weight, a kind of mourning and gratitude sharing the same breath. Keegan broke it with the tone of a man who'd buried too many secrets. "There are names carved into stone that never made it to the paperwork," he said. Operator Ward carried some of those names out of the dark. She did it without witnesses, without the comfort of public thanks. Tonight, at the very least, she'll leave this room with respect. He turned to Aaron again. "We told the world you were gone because it was safer that way. You could have stayed gone. You came back anyway." Aaron's answer was quiet. Someone had to remind them what service looks like. Keegan nodded once, emotion tightening his jaw. Mission accomplished. No one dared move. The hum of the lights felt like distant applause from a world that would never know her story. Then Riker broke the stillness with a voice cracked but sure. "If anyone ever asks what a real operator looks like," he said, "tell them she didn't need a uniform to earn it." Aaron looked around the room. Faces now softened, humbled, changed. The same men who doubted her couldn't meet her eyes for fear of what they'd see reflected there. She rose slowly, her movements deliberate, each step reclaiming a piece of the dignity taken from her. When she passed Turner, she paused just long enough to say, "Now you know." He nodded once, unable to speak. Keegan opened the door for her himself. The gesture was old-fashioned, but the meaning was new. She stepped through, the general following beside her, the MPs snapping to attention as she went by. Behind them, no one spoke. They didn't need to. The silence was its own salute, one earned not by medals or ceremony, but by truth, finally uncovered in the plainest possible way. In that stillness, every person in the room understood. Respect isn't given to the loudest voice or the highest rank. It belongs to the ones who did their duty when no one was watching, and kept the secret so the mission could live. The wind off the Atlantic carried the taste of salt and memory. The base lights behind her flickered against the dark like distant campfires. Aaron Ward stood just outside the perimeter fence, a quiet silhouette beneath the dim orange glow of a single floodlight. The night was cold but not unkind, the kind of cold that kept you awake enough to think. The waves rolled in steady, rhythmic, like the breath of something ancient. She could feel them more than hear them. Steady, patient, unstoppable. She reached into her pocket and touched the coin. It had been polished and repaired, the chain replaced. Under the moonlight, GU070421 gleamed softly as if alive again. Behind her, the crunch of approaching boots broke the quiet. She didn't turn. She already knew the stride. Major General Thomas Keegan came to stand beside her, hands clasped behind his back. For a while, neither spoke. The ocean filled the silence, saying what words couldn't. Finally, he said, "I wish things had gone differently." Erin kept her eyes on the water. "They went the way they needed to." Keegan nodded slowly, understanding the truth in that. "You could come back, you know," he said. "Command would sign the papers in an hour. We could use someone like you again." She smiled faintly, the kind that never reached her eyes. "No, sir. I already did my part." She turned slightly toward him, the wind catching her hair. "It's their turn now." He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the exhaustion behind the composure, the ghosts behind the calm. She wasn't running from the Navy. She was simply done giving it pieces of herself. He didn't argue. He only straightened, drew a slow breath, and saluted her one last time. "Fair winds, Operator Ward." She returned the gesture with a nod that meant, "Thank you all, and goodbye all at once." Keegan turned and walked back toward the main building, his footsteps fading into the hum of the base generators. Erin stayed where she was, the wind whipping strands of hair against her face, her hands closed around the coin. For a long time, she said nothing. Then, almost as if speaking to the sea, she murmured, "Some warriors fight their battles long after the war ends." The coin glinted once in her hand, light catching the engraved numbers like a heartbeat. Then she slipped it back beneath her collar, against her skin, where it had always belonged. She turned toward the gate, her figure merging with the night. The sound of the surf followed her, a steady rhythm, neither loud nor soft, just endless. Weeks later, the ripples of that night reached every corner of the base. Captain Blake Turner submitted his resignation, wordlessly, without ceremony. The letter was brief. No excuses, no justification, just the acknowledgement of a lesson learned too late. Master Chief Owen Riker, now something of a quiet legend himself, reinstated the Veteran Respect Initiative, a mentorship and remembrance program he'd once helped create before it lost funding. He named it Ward Directive 1.S. Every Friday, new recruits stood before a small brass plaque outside the Naval Officers Club and read the words aloud. The plaque was simple, nothing fancy, no names in bold, no seals or emblems, in honor of those who serve in silence. For the warriors who kept their promise long after the mission ended. They said a few visitors still saw her sometimes near the docks at dusk, walking the shoreline, head bowed, a faint glint of silver catching the last light. Maybe it was imagination, maybe not. For those who were there that night, the story never faded. It was passed from one class to the next, stripped of rumor and turned into quiet truth, that a woman once accused of stealing valor had carried more of it than anyone realized. And so, the moral lived on. Unspoken but understood, true honor doesn't shout. It endures. It lives in the quiet, in the oath kept long after the world stops watching. It isn't measured by medals or ranks, nor by who salutes first, but by those who gave more than they were ever asked to, and never once asked for thanks. Erin Ward's name would never appear in public archives. But in that small corner of the Navy, every officer who passed that plaque knew her story, and saluted the silence she left behind. And so, in one unforgettable night, a forgotten operator reminded an entire base, and all of us, what service truly means. Not the medals, not the applause, but the quiet oath that never expires, even when the world stops watching. If this story moved you, take a moment to salute in the comments. For every man and woman who's worn the uniform without asking for recognition. And remember to subscribe to Military and Veteran Stories for more real tales of courage, sacrifice, and honor. Because telling their stories isn't just remembrance, it's how we keep their courage alive.